So, a little bit of talk, and you know what? I really don't know where my mic is on this device. So, just deal with that. I'll try to do what I can. So, a little bit of talk about. This isn't going to be about the X80 GT, but I'll talk about this guy a little bit. Comparing it to the Marauder X7R, the rechargeable only one that has the charger. I don't know if it's here or on the side, but it's got that USB recharger. The OLight guy, and actually somebody noted it as failing, and it's funny because my dream light for a while, about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, was the OLight Marauder X7. And the X7R came out, and I thought of it even more. I thought 9,000 lumens, 12,000 lumens. That would be really fun to have. But, I just didn't find it to be too interesting, and I didn't quite have the money at the time to buy it. But, so, this is better in every way. For 1,000 lumens, the X7R Marauder OLight gets, 6 hours of regulated runtime, which is flat regulation runtime. So it's 1,000 lumens for, out of the 6 hours, it'll be about 5 hours and 45 minutes, optimally speaking, and then it just tanks. The last 15 minutes, it violently shoots down to 0 lumens. Or less than 100 lumens, at least. So, flat regulation talk. This regulation has gotten a little bit... Whoops. I wonder if it still works. Oh, look, it still does. Anyways, flat regulation is still pretty... Wow, it dented in there. This is a concrete floor, guys. Can't believe it got some dust in there. It's crazy. So, flat regulation has gotten a little bit more honest with flashlights, and they're now starting to say, 1,000 lumens for 2 minutes plus an hour and a half on such and such volume, 300 lumens or whatever. Now, honestly, that doesn't include intermittent runtime, because intermittent runtime is interesting. As to say that intermittent running the flashlight, turning it on and then turning it off, what's your runtime? Because really the runtime is a ballpark guide for the approximate values that your flashlight's going to have when it comes to lumens and other kinds of output. So whether or not a flashlight is able to output, let's get some more eye candy out, is able to output 1,000 lumens for a decade or whatnot, for how much time it's able to actually really be 1,000 lumens. Alright, you don't really know, because the company can't tell you, well, you can turn it on for a second, and if you turn it on and off and on and off, you should be able to get 3 minutes or 30 minutes out of that maximum output, and then it will just stop working on that maximum output. They can't really tell you that. They can't tell you that the maximum output only works until the battery gets down to 3.9 volts, which is hardly used at all, and then it stops working, which is pretty much what happens here. The Turbo Max on this guy only works for really about the first 0.3 of a volt. And then after it gets down to roughly 3.8, 3.7 volts, it's noticeably not the full 32,000 lumens. So, which gets into talk about batteries and stuff. I think it's important to recognize that batteries and flashlights really go hand in hand. I have another video I'm going to upload about that, or that I've already uploaded. We'll see. I don't know about the chronological order of these uploads. But I mean, And this guy can take CR123s. And in a blitz emergency, if I had to pick a flashlight to take this guy or the X30 GT, I'd easily go for this one, because the X30 GT has its runtime completely limited to the flashlight's batteries that it has inside it. Okay, and even though I have a charger that I would take with me, and a USB recharger that can, I have quite a few USB battery banks that I could bank on it, and I could charge the 18650s for a while, for a couple days, depending on usage, of course. This isn't very efficient, and its lowest mode is sadly 200 lumens, which is a lot of power. And that means that it's not going to run long enough. Forgive the carpet, guys. It's not going to run long enough on that output to matter in an emergency. It's 37 hours of runtime, which is trash. Okay, that's pathetic. So it's more of an EDC, or a duty carry, I should say, not really EDC, but everyday carry for an officer, a security guy, or perhaps someone who has a specific need. It's specific need lighting. This isn't really tactical lighting. It's not really EDC. It's too big for that, though I EDC it because I'm a maniac. Especially, I'm a flashaholic. That falls under the specialty. So it's clear to me. I have the L30 coming in, the AceBeam L30, which I really set my sights on for a while, and it's basically going to be my upgrade to the TKO9, which is 900 lumens and 25,000 candela. The new light will be, I should buy a camera though, shouldn't I? Right? But yeah, that's why they call it flashaholic and not flashlight enthusiast. Like, no, like I'm addicted to flashlights. Like, you don't understand. Like, when I get extra money, the first thing that pops into my head for spending it on is bicycles. And then I remember that it's kind of futile because I don't have the money for bikes, so I go for flashlights instead. Maybe that's a dismal look at my own decisions, but the fact is, I'm going to get the L30. And it's 4,000 lumens, or it's actually maybe a little less than that, but it's around 4 times as bright as this in lumens, with 34,000 candela, which is actually, incidentally, the same as this one's max candela. That being said, I think that is a more efficient thrower, because this, to get that candela, you have to put out 32,000 lumens, which is 8 times the lumens, which means that the AceBeam L30 has 8,000 candela for 1,000 lumens, or 8 candela per lumen, whereas this has about 1 candela per lumen. Okay, or 1,000 candela for 1,000 lumens. This has, of course, 25, or more like 26 candelas per lumen, which, of course, makes this pretty throwy. This is a throwy flashlight, not just for its lumen output, but also for its size. It throws punches out there, more than most MSR4 models will. It throws out there, and it's a relatively narrow spot. In fact, because it's a de-domed LED, which I'm glad they're starting to do that, because it's cooler. Wow, that's weird. So even in the 50 lumen mode, it's not. See, this thing doesn't have too low of a low either. What I like about the AceBeam L30 is it has a 1 lumen low mode. So its lowest mode is 1 lumens. And 1 lumens is good, because 1 lumen will last for days and days and days. Which, if you only run it during the night, is weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, perhaps a whole year on a single battery. But it's as though you have ancient technology for your flashlights. It's as though you're running an incandescent AA flashlight, is what it's like. Okay? Or not incandescent, but what are they called? Creton? Or Starts with a K. Anyways, one of those kind of bulbs. Okay, looks like you got one of those. Like one of the old incandescent Maglite solitaire type lights. Something along those lines. Or even a Rayovac flashlight from the 1980s. So, it's like you have that, except it's like almost infinite amount of power. I mean, just the runtime's just on and on and on and on. You know, and 1 lumen is decent in pitch black indoor settings, like in a cave, inside an old hospital, which I'm these days thinking about doing what I need to do to venture in there. I might ask a police officer, somebody, maybe a lawyer and a police officer, if I can just have the opportunity to stroll through there for the fun of it. I might have to pay a good deal of money to have that police officer escort me or something, but we're going to see if I can do it. It's a really old hospital. It's been there, it's been untouched for like 30, well, maybe more like 20 years. And obviously it has a very creepy vibe to it. So I'm going to get some friends together and see if we can't go through there with some flashlights like these. But that 1 lumen mode would be very useful in there because there's no light. So the 1 lumen, your eyes can adjust to it. When there's moonlight, for example, though, now in a dense forest, or even just kind of a light forest during the summer, at night, or a pine needle forest, it can be pretty dark during a full moon because it just doesn't cut through the trees. Now, I mean, even during the day, it can be kind of dark on the forest floor, right? In the jungle. In the jungle, that's how dark it is. In a forest, you really need the nighttime, but it gets pretty dark. In a lot of other situations, I think that you need more like 10 to 50 lumens for it to really be of much benefit. And I think that your eyes have adjusted to the literal moonlight. That's actually more like 2 or 3 lumens worth. Unless you're holding a flashlight right next to the ground. In any case, I don't know what to say about that. I think that it's important to look at all aspects of your lumen outputs, including your runtime, but also including your regulation, because the regulation on this guy in the L30, even this guy, except for its turbo, it's 900 lumens, lasts for about, I think it's 5 minutes. It could be 15, it could be 2. I don't really remember, but it'll be anywhere from like 1 minute to 15 minutes of turbo, and then it will crash down to whatever the flashlight decides to be its sustained output for these lights. Okay, for this one, it's a little under 4,000 lumens. For this guy, it's the 400 lumen mode, which is just the second mode. And that's just what it's going to be. It's real into, makes a little donut hole and back out. So, and that's a lot of light, you know. She can't see anything with the strobe. Strobes are effective for cameras, look at that. They really fuck up cameras. You know, you got a police car in front of you, just use strobe. That's a variant strobe. There are actually special cameras that, if you use a non-varying strobe, it will actually level out the strobe and there will be no strobe. It will either keep it on solid or will keep it on off. So like this slope, which is very annoying even to me. The other thing is this one's a little harder to escape, because I could go over here, it's still pretty strobey. I can't see past my arms being illuminated by it, but if I take my arm away, the only thing you see is a flashlight. I could go over here. Ooh. Well, I could go down here. I could almost kind of see past that. But as you can tell, It really jacks up the camera. The camera can't follow it. I got my eyes a little bit, but that's only 4,000 candela. And I'm about 3 feet away. What'll get your eyes for good is, like, I see spots right now, but what'll get your eyes for good is like over 100,000 candela. That shit is just nuts. But I mean, I've been trying not to cut some more videos. In any case, let's just see. So, what you really need to know for tactical lights and whatnot, you want something that, and just in general, you want something with this flat regulation. Ace Beam, Phoenix do a good job. Olight, a lot of their lights are flat regulated. Okay, Coast, Luxpro, those are old brands I used to buy from the supermarket. Not so good. Okay, and you have to consider where the sustained output. This guy sustains output at 400 lumens. This guy is 10 times that, sustaining at 4,000 lumens. The other, the L30, can sustain its output at 2,000, meaning as far as heat goes. Okay, but it's also true that the battery power is also being sustained, usually. And these days, with the new XHP 50, XHP 70, XHP 50.2, XHP 70.2 emitters, and other emitters out there, XHP or XPL 35 HI emitters. The XPL 35 HIs are another example of something that can basically, without too much power, regulate at the exact same output for a pretty long time. And that has a lot to do with the driver that's in the flashlight. So what the driver's doing is it's taking the amperage of the flashlight's batteries and turning that 20 amps per battery into voltage. It's changing that amperage into voltage to maintain the very high, I think this is like 120 volts, okay? And it has to maintain that 120 to get that full, well, actually, not to get the lumen output, just to turn it on. So just to get 200 lumens, it's got to put out 30 volts. It's one reason why the new DX80 from Immelin fails sometimes. It's because it's not getting that full voltage. Something went wrong with the driver, and the driver's not giving it, not boosting it up that high to that 130 volts or whatever that was at. This is 120 volts, which isn't too bad. It's still a lot of voltage though. So and that's one reason why the driver gets hot. It doesn't just get hot here because of the LEDs. That's a huge mistake people think about sometimes. A lot of the heat is coming from the conversion of amperage into voltage. And correct me if I'm wrong, but LEDs need high volts to work properly, and it's a specific voltage. And over the years, it's gotten worse. Since 2009, we have become very technologically dependent on good, solid drivers. If the driver doesn't continue to put out the right voltage, the flashlight will not turn on. Okay? So that's usually has a lot to do with batteries too. It's one reason why batteries are so, why the Ace Beam sells Ace Beam battery flashlights, Phoenix sells Phoenix battery flashlights, Claris sells Claris battery flashlights, Olight sells Olight battery flashlights, because they want to sell, and oftentimes they're rewrapped cells, but they're for sure 100% good cells. It's one reason why they want you to return the flashlight if you have an issue with their cell. Although the battery itself might not be warranted, they still want you to return that flashlight to know why that battery failed. Usually they're Panasonic, rewrapped Panasonic batteries or something. Ace Beam's house brand is actually, to my understanding, not rewrapped. It's one of the first batteries to not be rewrapped because it's a special cell. It's got more than four MOSFETs. I think it just has 4 MOSFETs. But it has to do with being able to regulate its output. So the actual battery doesn't go over or under voltage or amperage to what it needs to be, and it actually regulates itself a little bit. The other thing is that the batteries have their own thermometer, and they limit their output according to that. And that's part of the reason why the ace beam has slightly better performance with the VTC6 batteries than it does with its ace beam batteries for the 4,000 lumens maintained output, but not for very long, because the VTC6 has less milliamp hours than 3100, significantly actually. I think its milliwatt hours are actually as more than a 300 milliwatt hour difference between the ace beams and the VTC6, according to my tests and another test that I saw online. So, and I only own one VTC6 battery, but I tested it compared to this, and it just doesn't. The ace beam is a stronger battery. So the ace beam, right now, the ace beam batteries that they sell with this flashlight are probably the strongest batteries out there that are protected, if not period, because the VTC6 Sony is supposed to be, the strongest, but it's for vapes. It's really high amperage, okay, and it can maintain 20 amps for longer than this can, but it can't get the volts high. So it's the milliamp hours, it's the milliwatt hours where it fails, because the voltage drops to keep to keep the amperage high, which is exactly what vapes do. Vapes are the opposite of flashlights. They take the voltage and they compress it and change it into amps to get 30 to 35 amps usually. Okay, you usually drop the voltage down to 1.2 volts or so, sometimes even less than that, and you run the flashlight with an LG HD2 runs around 35 to 40 amps. Okay, with the eFest, the purple eFest batteries, they do about the same. They get about 35, 40 amps, okay, of output when you convert the voltage into amps, which takes a powerful driver, very powerful, and it force feeds the battery the amperage. So that's why some of those vaping batteries will say 35 amps on them. They're not lying to you. It's not the amperage output of the battery. It's how many amps the battery can take being forced through it. That's what it does, and it cycles it, and it starts to force that amperage through the battery. The battery won't explode if it's a true eFest or a true LG HG2 battery. Okay, the LG battery, the HG2, can take 35 amps of current force-fed through itself. Okay, and at that, it starts to resist the current and doesn't let you go higher than that. But that's usually for a very brief amount of time. Okay, and then it will actually go back down to 1 amp. Alright, it will stay at 1 amp until it basically is charged, because the driver isn't just driving the battery, it's had its own capacitor in it. Okay, the capacitor is a little bit different than a battery capacitor. Okay, a rechargeable battery capacitor is different than the electronic capacitor. Okay, and the capacitor holds just a little bit of power, a couple seconds, and then it pushes that power back through the battery, and it cycles that up until it's at 35 amps. And so that's what makes it literally able to melt steel and melt pretty much anything, and of course light the vape juice or vaporize it, whatever you want to call it. So I was surprised that that's not actually used for hand warmers, literally hand warmers. I think it'd be cool to have a battery powered hand warmer, but whatever. Okay, you just buy an MSRD4 and just hold it in your hand. The only problem is then you have light that's flammable light. Anyways. So it's not really a good idea to try to use a flashlight as a hand warmer. I've tried multiple times. Unless you're on a bus or something, that's not a good idea. If you're just walking around, it's stupid. You get yourself killed. Stupid. So, Pepsi, what are you doing? So the idea here is to have regulated output. Alright, and just for everybody out there, a company that does not tell you that it's 32,000 lumens for 1 minute, which is what this is, and then drops down to 4,000 lumens. If it doesn't tell you that, that doesn't mean that it doesn't do it. If it says, there's a flashlight that comes out tomorrow and says 32,000 lumens for 90 minutes, and it's this big or around this size, like the Claris XT11X, which actually Claris does tell you a couple minutes and then it drops down, just like AceBeam's L30 tells you. But if it tells you 90 minutes, for 3,000 lumens or 4,000 or even just 2 or 1,000 lumens, it's lying to you. Or rather, more specifically, it's not telling you the truth, if that makes sense. Okay, it's not really lying. It's still going to run that long, but it's not going to run. It's not going to run for 90 minutes at that output. It won't. It doesn't even have the battery power for that. But most importantly, the heat from 3,000 lumens in a body this size is going to tank the light. Now, if something this big or bigger comes out, and that flashlight says 3,000 or 4,000 lumens, like a Phoenix TK75 that has 5,000 lumens on its max output, that flashlight, to my understanding, runs cold enough that it can maintain that output for a while. And there are other flashlights out there too. I think Immolent makes some, and I think that Manker makes a few. What's the other brand that comes to mind? The guys that made the TN42, ThruNight's TN42, and some of those other ones. They're very hot running flashlights, or very cold running flashlights, and they can run that high lumen output for a very long time. And so when they tell you, sometimes when they tell you with larger flashlights than this, around 6,000, 4,000 lumens, that it's running for 90 minutes, or an hour and 40 minutes, or whatever, it's telling the truth, because it really is regulated at that output, and it doesn't get hot enough for it to have to cut down. So it can just keep going, okay? So that's an important note. Like the X70, that AceBeam X70, which should be called the X60 because it's 60,000 lumens, but whatever. The X70 can run at 15,000 lumens for for 30 minutes or something. In other words, it runs cold enough that 15,000 lumens isn't enough to heat it up fast enough to have a thermal cut down. So it has a wattage cut down. The batteries sink below the right amount of watts. Okay, so, and again, all that is regulated by this thing in here called a driver. Okay, and the driver is just essential. It's why the X80 GT is so powerful. It's not because they put a bunch of LEDs in a light. No, it's because they have a driver that can drive 120 volts out of 4 18650s. And I can take that 20 amps, drop that to 2 amps, and boost all that amperage into voltage. It's got a voltage, it's got a boost driver. The driver is boosting the voltage up. I'm not really sure what the numbers are. It could be 30 volts. I don't really know the numbers. But the point is that's how it's running. It has a special driver that's driving the battery, and it's doing it accurately. Like if it's a tenth of a volt off, it will either break the LEDs or they will not turn on. Okay? They will have to get that voltage up or push it down or whatever. Because that's just how LEDs work. They're just very specific. I would make this a 30-minute even video. Very specific pieces of tech that have to run at the level that they're supposed to run at as far as voltage goes, which is battery pressure. It's like higher pressure hoses, high pressure water. It's this specific pressure. Okay? It's kind of like if you take water pressure and you push one of those, you're at one of those arcades and you gotta push the thing to make you gotta push in that button to make the little guy rise up. You gotta keep pushing in that button perfectly to keep it rising up. And it rises up and rises up and rises up. You have to do that with LEDs. You have to push the right amount of water pressure. You could put a hose worth of amperage in there, or less than a teeny tiny little stream of water, because it's not amperage, it's the voltage. Now, of course, if you put a hose worth of water, unlike that toy, which will probably go up at the same rate, an LED puts out more wattage, which is to say it gets brighter. Okay, if you put out less wattage, it gets dimmer, and that's called amperage regulation. Direct drive only works with a special voltage limiter that's put inside the LED chip itself. So direct drive doesn't exist with the XPH 70.2s yet. Okay, But that about sums it up. You want flat regulation. There are plenty of lights out there that are going to say flat regulation. They're going to say 90 minutes for 1,000 lumens, when realistically it slowly sinks down to 10 lumens, or 100, I mean, which is a tenth of the... And the ANSI standard is a tenth of the original lumens, which sucks, because it means most people have no idea what they're buying. Which is why you need to go on flashlight forums, or you need to buy from the following companies: Acebeam, Phoenix, Olight, ThruNight. There's a few others, but those are pretty safe. Most of their flashlights that are 2018 and later are going to be flat regulated. Okay, so keep that in mind. Don't forget to keep the lights on. I won't leave the lights on for you. Goodbye.